there might be ways that they can build a strategic reserve of 1 million Bitcoin without getting congressional approval. So one of those ways is that
everyone seems to be talking about this crypto summit that is happening on Friday. And the talk of the town is the strategic reserve and how it's going to be approved, because you have to remember that Trump still has to go through congressional approval, and there's still a probability that they will vote against having that strategic reserve. But here to discuss about ways it can get approved is Patrick, also known as Crypto Rookies. How you doing, Patrick?
doing great. I'm not a macroeconomic expert for government policy and all that stuff, but from what I read, he's deliberately crashing the market right now with all those tariff talk for negotiation, for one thing, to improve the trade balance with other countries, but also just to crash the market and the economy so that the Fed will have no choice but to lower interest rate. Because the thing, they need to refinance the debt like throughout 2025, and they really need to reduce interest rate. There's no way around it. And that's why, before they can start getting into quantitative easing and lowering interest rates, crushing the market, crushing the economy is the way to do it. That is painful short term, but will be better for the next 4 years. And it looks like this is what is happening right now. And it looks like it's working because from some of the chart I've seen, the economy is starting to be in a free fall right now. A lot of people are getting fired from the government. And throughout the last, I don't know, maybe decades, the GDP growth was actually just the government getting fatter. So it was not true growth. Technically speaking, especially over the last 4 years, from some of the chart I've seen, it was negative growth, but it was inflated just because of government spending and all that stuff. So yeah, right now with all the cuts and the people getting fired and the government shrinking, now we are seeing the true economy coming out of this. And I think it might not be surprised that the interest rate get lowered faster than maybe what you think. At least that's what people are discussing in various posts I've read.
To your point, Patrick, just looking at the U.S. dollar index, and ever since really going back to beginning of February, you're starting to see this weakening of the U.S. dollar, which usually lines up with the crypto market doing well. Whether or not the history will repeat, we all know that history tends to rhyme. It doesn't always necessarily repeat, but usually when the U.S. dollar goes down, that's when you see the market take on more risk, and cryptocurrency is obviously part of that risk. So you're right in the sense that I can see a scenario where Trump may be intentionally doing this. Benjamin Cohen, who I have a lot of respect for, always talks about how we're not going up, nor are we going down. We're kind of in this middle area where it's just not going anywhere. And in order for us to go up, we kind of have to have that short-term pain and go down. And perhaps maybe that's what Trump and his team is thinking as well.
Yeah, because the thing is, it still has 4 years to get it right. So short-term pain, I think people will be able to absorb it. And if he finish strong the next in the last 2 years or so, then he's still gonna achieve what he wanted. So.
Well, I'm still hopeful that having this summit and having this strategic reserve and having that launched successfully could be a catalyst. I don't know. No one seems to know exactly what's going to be the catalyst. When would it happen? But let's play out this scenario of how can we get this thing approved so that way we can have our usual bull market run.
Yeah. So the requirements here is that if you try to get to Congress and through the Senate to approve basically buying Bitcoin, it's going to be very tough because whether or not it's good for the US, the Democrat will say no, simply because they just want to block everything that Trump is doing, regardless of the outcome. And we're seeing that the Democrat versus the Republican, whatever decision you have to make, if one side is for it and it's good, the other side will be against, and it's really like split that nobody want to accept to do what's right for the US at this point. So, and then even on, let's say that you exclude all of the Democrat from the decision making and you lose them on the vote. You still need like all of the Republican or like a large chunk of them to approve in order for this to pass. But some of them will say no simply because they want to try to negotiate favors for themselves for their respective states and all that stuff. So right now, like from what I can see, the Cynthia Lummis bill for the Treasury, the Bitcoin Treasury, is not getting that much traction and approval. And some of the states like has been completely rejected, like individual states that are in the process of doing that. And there's a few that are progressing quite well. And if it approved, then maybe it's going to like trigger other states and the federal government to start making the right decision. But until then, there might be ways that they can build a strategic reserve of 1 million Bitcoin without getting congressional approval. So one of those ways is that they already have a little bit more than 200,000 Bitcoin out of the million. So they have like 20% of the amount that they need. And that's from the forfeiture fund that they basically seized from criminals in the industry. Right now, like if Trump really want to prevent this from getting auctioned out, like through the normal process, I don't think he needs to get congressional approval to change this. He just needs to get the right people to agree with him. But I don't think it needs to go through Congress and through the Senate for this to happen. It's more like the forfeiture fund, whoever runs it. From what I understand, it would be a lot less complicated. So you're still far from 1 million. That means you need to multiply it by 5 times. But if he's allowed to change this and not auction the Bitcoin out and keep it, the other thing that he can do is just put it to work in order to generate yield on that existing Bitcoin and generate more Bitcoin with it. We've discussed how many times how I generate yield with my Bitcoin using grid bots. So you're basically acting as a liquidity provider on exchanges, on various DeFi or centralized protocol. And from my calculation, because 200,000 Bitcoin is a very large amount, if we were to introduce this as a liquidity provider with grid bots or with market making or with whatever other technique that is meant to be like really safe, it could still generate probably between 1 to 10% per year of yield with that size of a liquidity. The impact of that would be that price volatility would significantly reduce, because that's a massive amount of liquidity that would be injected onto the as a liquidity provider on centralized exchange, decentralized exchange, and so on. So that means that you would significantly reduce the spread. The price of Bitcoin would significantly kind of lose the volatility aspect, which is what MicroStrategy is banking on to generate yield. But I think it would be a plus for the industry. Traders would kind of lose interest, but at the same time, you would open up like a massive amount of new users that are more like corporate, like treasury. Because corporate treasury, do you really want like the volatility to be there? Like let's say that you have some payroll to pay in 6 months and you want that Bitcoin treasury to be there, just to have a slow growth, but something that beat inflation. And if right now the Bitcoin is growing at 40%, and that's a mix of like, increasing the money supply through and having the inflation effect and then the market adoption, like 40%, if that's what the average return over years is, if you reduce the volatility, maybe you lose a trader, so maybe you lose a little bit of growth, but you still have a massive amount of new potential users that would jump in because now they have that stability and growth, which is much better as a savings mechanism than savings in US dollar. So you can keep keeping the US dollar as a currency for trade short term, but kind of like if you have 2 bank accounts, one that is a savings account and one that is a checking account, you use US currency as a checking account and you use maybe Bitcoin as a savings account.
So you're specifically talking about Patrick, but as we've heard from Trump, he's looking at not just Bitcoin. He's looking at Ethereum. He's looking at XRP. He's looking at Cardano. I mean, how do all of those play out if assuming that they will be part of the strategic reserve?
Yeah, Trump often start negotiating strong on one side, asking something that is ridiculous, and then they meet in the middle. Like some people are assuming that is what is trying to do. I think Bitcoin and a bunch of other kind of crap in some case. Maybe he has no intention to having Cardano and XRP in the mix, but he started with that just to start the negotiation at a place where the other side will say just no, but just so that he can meet in the middle. So we'll find out maybe more tomorrow or over the next few months, but I don't know how the altcoin fit into the treasury. It would make more sense as some sort of like
Sovereign
national,
fund.
kind of like a sovereign fund. That would make sense, because why would you put some crypto that is more like tech oriented into a treasury of that sort if you don't put maybe Nvidia and some other stocks on the tech market? It doesn't make sense that you treat crypto as some sort of commodity. Most of them are not. Bitcoin is, but that's it. So I think maybe Ethereum and Bitcoin make sense there, but even Ethereum, I'm not sure it really belongs there, because it's a technology. It can be disrupted over the next 10, 20 years. Maybe Ethereum is not there at all. Maybe Bitcoin, who knows, but at least it has a better chance to still be there in 10, 20 years. I would not put tech there because it can be disrupted. So run fund, it will make sense.
Agreed.
So that's saying, with the size of like 200,000 Bitcoin, you would massively reduce the volatility of Bitcoin, but the long-term trend, because of market adoption, because there's still only 21,000 Bitcoin, 21 million. So if market adoption increase, you would still have the long-term growth and price appreciation, even though you significantly reduce the volatility on a day-to-day basis. And as you would attract a different type of users, but to me, that's a much larger customer segment than just the traders. So I think that's one that makes sense and would not require congressional approval, because you're just putting to work the Bitcoin that you already have. You will not get to 1 million with this unless you get to about 40% per year of yield on top of your Bitcoin. So that means that if your goal is to get to 1 million in 5 years, you need about 40% per year, just a pure yield of Bitcoin accumulation. So I don't think that's feasible to do it that way, but you can probably get to maybe 10%. So the other way that you can increase to 1 million over the next 5 years, again, you are not allowed to buy Bitcoin because that you would require congressional approval in the Senate and all that. So the other way to do this to get more Bitcoin is to leverage other people's Bitcoin. So what I'm thinking here is that imagine that you're providing some sort of loan assistance that is backed by Bitcoin. You get companies, individual, to be able to take a USD loan, but they have to lock their Bitcoin into that national treasury as a counterparty, like collateral. And then they're allowed to take a loan of US currency to operate their business or to do whatever that they're doing. And so if they don't pay back the loan, then the government basically get the Bitcoin asset to keep for themselves. And regardless, while it's locked, maybe there's a provision where the government is allowed to generate yield with it by adding it into the liquidity provider provisions. So you leverage other people's assets, you generate yield on it, you keep the yield, but in the meanwhile, you're still generating a profit on your loan program. You can run this in a profitable manner, and everybody win. Yeah, I would say.
Interesting. Maybe we should get in contact with Cynthia Loomis and create a proposal for her.
I think so. I think I'm not sure they thought of those potential way of doing it. And from what, I use the Grok tree to try to question based on the available information in terms of legislation and all that. And it would appear that this would not require congressional approval. It would require approval of the Treasury and some other party to create that kind of a national kind of loan program. But I think it's achievable because it's almost like it becomes some sort of central bank in a sense. So it's not dissimilar. But maybe you don't need congressional approval for that because, again, you're not buying the Bitcoin. You're not selling US currency to get it and all that stuff. So it's people who basically give it to you and you generate yield on it.
How can people get in touch with you if they have any questions? Maybe perhaps if projects want to get in touch with you to discuss their tokenomics or, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Telegram and also X would be two ways to get to me.
Thanks, Patrick. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends, and we'll catch you in the next one.